back by popular demand, my latest Todoist setup. Now, this has been requested over the last few months, and I do apologize I have not done it, but today I'm going to reveal my latest Todoist setup. So, let's get started. Okay, before we get started, let me just give you a brief outline of how I to set up my Todoist. Now, I use a method called the time sector system, and essentially what that means is that I am organizing my tasks by when I'm going to do them. I don't go in for this convoluted complex projects list. You also find that if you're not paying for the pro version, that you're going to come up against a barrier because Todoist will only allow you to have 5 projects, and then you're going to have to start creating multiple sections, and it just becomes a complicated mess. So instead I follow a simple system called the time sector system. And ultimately, if you think about it, it doesn't matter how many things you've got to do if you haven't got the time to do it, because it's not going to get done. So all I'm really concerned about when I'm managing or processing my Todoist is when am I going to do something. So let's get started with the sidebar. Now, the sidebar I have set up. Now, I'm not sure if you know this, but you can, if you go into your settings, and I'll just go up to here and show you. If you go into your settings, you'll see a little one down the settings side called sidebar. And from there, you can actually tick or check off the ones that you want. So if you're not interested in seeing your filters and labels, you can actually just check that off. Actually, I usually leave it on, but to be fair, when I think about it, I don't need to do that. And I've got my inbox, and then all I'm really interested in, my inbox, which is where I'm collecting everything, my today, of course, that's the business end of any task manager, and then upcoming for my daily planning. By the way, while we're here, and it's something that people haven't talked about for a long time, you can, yes, you've got to update it. I've updated it. Now, by the way, you can go into your theme and you can change your themes. Now, I don't know if this is still true, but once you reached a certain level in the karma points with Todoist, you could actually, you got the gold color if you wanted to use it. Now, I've always loved the color blue, so I use blueberry, but you can use kale, moonstone, which is basically a bit like a very dark gray, Todoist red theme, etc. But that's just something that you can just go into and you can change the theme. And by the way, you can do that on your phones, or you can iPads or tablets or whatever. Okay, so that's the top part of the sidebar. Now, when we go down here, we have my favorites, which is all of them, as they're denoted by this little eyedrop here. All of them are filters. Now, to go into my filters, and we'll start there because I think it's important to the way that you set up your Todoist is how you're ultimately going to use it. So if you look at my filters, there's only a few. The 3 most important ones here are today's objectives, today's focus, and over 90 days. Now, by the way, if you're curious, you can actually move these around. So if you can, ooh, that wasn't meant to happen. So if you look here, I've got my today's objectives, today's focus, and tomorrow's focus. If I go into my filters and labels, I can move these around. So if I move that one to the top now, if you notice on the sidebar, it's now changed into the order. And by the way, this is the same with your projects. Your projects will always be done by the order that you have them. So I'm going to put that back into its correct place because these 2 over here, which is over 90 days and 365 days. Now, I know every time I do these videos, people ask, are you ready? Because I'm going to show you the filters. Today's focus or today's objectives is anything red. I'm giving it the color red. And the query is today and P1. Grab that now. That's all I'm going to do to show you that. My today's focus, which are tasks, that everything's in there. I'm just going to here. Sorry, my today's focus is today and not P4. Now, P4 is the flag, the white flag. So anything that's got a genuine flag gets a gets shown in this list. And this is the list that I essentially work from all day. So today and not P4. The exclamation mark means not P4. And the final one, which is tomorrow's focus, which is where I end the day, because this is where I go in to do my planning for the next day. Is what I think I'm going to be doing tomorrow still relevant? And so here you've got 2 days and not P4. I don't need to see the unflagged tasks. They're generally just admin tasks that pop up every day. This is where I go in. Now 2 days is because it will show me today and tomorrow. So if I go, it's early in the morning for me when I'm doing this video right now. So if I go into my tomorrow's focus, you'll see that there's quite a few for tomorrow, but there's also my today tasks in here as well. Now at the end of the day, there shouldn't be any today tasks. Shouldn't be, not always the case, but that's the goal. So that's my, those are my filters. Now, if we go back into this, I'll close that one out. If you look at my labels, now this is a problem that I see with so many of my coaching clients when I'm working with them and their Todoist, is that they have what's called label bloat. They have way too many labels. I restrict my labels to just 8, and they're focused on the kind of work I do, the type of work I do. Now, I've mentioned this before in many videos. We all have probably the bottom 4, which is communications, planning, admin, and chores. In fact, I haven't come across anyone who doesn't have to communicate, doesn't have to do any kind of planning, admin, or chores. So you're always going to have those 4 straight up. The top 4 you'll see here, but all of them colored red, are actually related to the kind of work I do. So I work with clients, I have a coaching program, so I work with clients directly, and there's often tasks that I need to do from there. I do a lot of writing because I do kind of consider myself to be a writer. I also do these YouTube videos and a podcast, so that comes under audio visual. And like everyone else probably who has a business or works in a business, you're going to have projects. So those are the only 8 that I use, and pretty much everything I have to do will filter in there. A task that my wife gives me, it's a chore. A task that my accountant asks me to do, it's basically an admin task. So there's always going to be a label that I can attach to any task that I have. But it's important that if you set up the sidebar first, then you'll find that running your day is so much easier. Now, for those of you who followed this series of videos that I've done, which I usually do about 2 a year, you'll notice that very little has changed over the last 5 years. And it is true, very little has changed over the last 5 or 6 years because this system works. Okay, let's go into my projects area. Now, I mentioned before, by the way, if you want to save something as let's go back up to my filters, just for those curious, how to get them into the favorites area. If you go to the 3 dots here, it will ask me if I want to remove it from favorites, but if I wanted to add it to favorites, it would say add to favorites. Again, I'm going to caution you to keep this down to a minimum because it wants to be your focused view. When I start my day, I go into this one. Before my day starts, I'm looking at what is my most important task today. What's the objective? What do I want to get completed today? Record these YouTube videos. Then I switch over to here, which is my favorites area, which will then tell me, my today's focused area, which then tells me my task for today. And again, I try to keep this to a minimum because let's be honest, there's only so much we can do in a day, and to do these videos is going to take me about 5 or 6 hours. Sometimes it can be less than that, but on average it's about 5 hours. So really I'm not going to get much else done today. Plus I've got to do all the other stuff that's in here. So you'll notice that I've only got 5 today. Now tomorrow will be a little bit busy, a little bit more because I have less calls, less focused work. Now, if you're curious about how I've got this set up, if you notice here, I've got audio visual at the top, communications and chores. The way you do that is if you just go into your list view here. I don't particularly use boards very well, but I have the grouping by label because that will group by my labels, which then helps me to chunk or focus on a similar type of task at the same time. And everything else is left as normal. So you can do that with almost any view that you have. I also do that in my today view as well. So that's my favorites and that's my run of the day. So I have a kind of workflow for the day. I start with today's objectives just to get me focused on what's important today. Then I switch over to today's focus, and that's where I spend the majority of the day. And finally, I end the day when I'm doing my daily planning in tomorrow's focus to see if that's still relevant. It's almost like I have a workflow set up in Todoist. Right, now moving on to my projects area. Now I mentioned at the start that I use a system called the time sector system. Now if you want to learn more about that, I'll put a link to that in the show notes below. I have a whole program around the time sector system which will show you how to set this up and run this particular system. Now, as I mentioned, really I am just focused on when I'm going to do something. So the only folder that I really need to pay attention to once the week starts is my this week folder. Now, I have not many tasks in here because these are unique tasks that have just popped up that need to be done. And they're all here and they actually work brilliantly. I don't need to go into this because you'll notice that I've got everything dated, everything is labeled, and everything has its priority. Now, if you watched last week's video where I allowed ChatGPT to do an analysis of my Todoist, it highlighted that I was using way too many orange flags. You'll notice here that there is only one orange flag right there, which is tomorrow, which is to continue working on Time and Life Mastery Update, which is a program I have that I need to update. And so that's in there already because I know something else will be popping up on a Thursday morning. But I've reduced all my orange flags because I realized that I can really only do one big focused task job at that moment. Now I use my labels. Red flag is my must-dos. Orange flags are tasks that I would like to do in the morning, which are usually creative tasks. Blue flags are anything I would do in the afternoon, and then white flags are white flags. So I have them down here. My next week is anything that needs to be done in the next 14 days, let's say. Now, I very rarely add any labels or dates or flags to these because so much can change that I don't know right now whether this is going to be an objective task or whether it's going to be something that I could do in the afternoon or the morning. I won't know until I do my daily planning, which is when I add the flags and add anything else that might need to be added. So you'll notice that these ones this month are for tasks that I've got labels on these because these are actually related to projects, but there's no dates as such. And these are tasks that, well, I knew I need to do them some point this month, I'm just not sure when. So I just put them in here, and every week when I do my weekly planning, I will look at that and I'll decide if anything can be brought forward and moved into this week. Then I got my next month, which are tasks that really don't need to be done right now. And if I look at these, like look into buying a new studio light, for example, it's not urgent, and I may decide to do that in August or September, whatever. This one, look into learning more about Adobe Premiere Pro. Again, non-urgent, and if I get some spare time over the vacation holiday period, maybe I'll look into that. But right now, it's not a major task for me to do. And then long-term and on hold, again, these are all things that probably have been there for a very, very long time. I very, very rarely get to them, but they would be nice to do at some point. Now, if you're familiar with the Getting Things Done system, that would be what I would call the Someday Maybe folder. But I do curate this pretty much every 3 months or so just to remove stuff. So I'm looking at elimination, not accumulation. So I go in every 3 months or so and just remove the tasks. RCTs stand for recurring critical tasks. Now these are essentially linked to my core work, the work that I'm employed to do, and also my areas of focus. And again, if you've done the Time Sector System program, you will know all about core work and your areas of focus. These are tasks that recur, they come up and they're critical. Hence the reason why you'll notice that except for this one, which should be actually, it's an afternoon task. So if you look at these, you will see that this one is a red flag. It's the most important task to do today is record this YouTube video. I'm going to clear the YouTube comments this afternoon. I can see that just from the information that I have here because it's a blue flag. And let's be honest, it will be this afternoon. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, I know I've got two things to do tomorrow. Write first draft of Working with Newsletter and write the podcast script, which is my most important task, hence the reason why it's red. And this I have set up here to be organized, grouping by date. This just gives me a heads up to see if I'm overextending myself, if I'm being a little bit over ambitious. So that's the reason why this particular list is organized by date. But looking at this, Saturday is generally my admin day anyway, so most of those tasks are going to be quite easy to do, and then it just goes through. And this will just continue to go through because it's just a continuous list, if you like. My routine tasks are just the regular stuff that I've just got to do every day. Like today, I've got to wash the bathroom towels in the office. Fairly straightforward, but it's something I will always forget if I don't have a little reminder of it. Same with my water indoor plant. It needs to be watered every 4 days, so it's not easy to remember. So I just put that in Todoist, and it will come up every 4 days to tell me. And you'll notice that the labels here: chores, admin, chores. I do my weekly plan every Saturday. I very rarely miss that. I review my online orders, the Amazon and home shopping stuff, all gets done there. And backup Columbo, the computer I'm using right now is called Columbo, and I back him up every Sunday. So there you go. I have, this is really all my main getting work done tasks. And then I have one final area, which I find Todoist is the best place for this, which is what I call my planning area. Now, I'm not going to share my goals with you because they're personal, but I'm going to go into my projects list. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you that along here, I have my projects. Now, Q1 2026 is well out of the way, so I've already started Q1 2027. Q2 2026 is finished, and so all projects had to be complete. So this is where I keep a board for all my projects that I'm working on. So you can now see all my projects that I'm working on right now. Project 56 is a personal project that is related to every year. My birthday's in July. So every year in July, I create a project based on what I want to improve about myself over the next 12 months. And that can be related to health, mental, which would be like self-development and learning, and physical. So what kind of exercise do I want to do? Do I want to do marathons? Do I want to do a ultra marathon? What is it that I want to do over the next 12 months? And that's kind of my project for that. And then I've got all these things down here, and basically that's all done. But that's just like a nice place. Again, I don't necessarily need to go into that every week, but I do like to look at it and say, right, is this realistic based on what's going on in my life right now? And that's it. That is my Todoist setup. It's straightforward, it's easy, it's really simple to use. I don't need to spend all day in there looking for stuff to do because of the favorites that I have. Gives me a really focused view each day so I can be onto it and working. And then when I am working on anything that's maybe not in there, like a project, all I need to do is link that to the project note that I have that I manage my projects from. And if you want to learn more about that, I'll put a link to that in the show notes below. So there you go. That's my Todoist setup for, I would call it early 2026, even though we're halfway through. It's not changed. It works brilliantly, and it just keeps life simple. And that's really what it's about. I mean, I'm all into keeping things calm, keeping things quiet, and just making sure that you're on top of everything that's important. And that's what Todoist does. It brings out the important things, but you need to keep it curated. It takes about 5-10 minutes a day just to keep it curated, and that's all. And there you go. So that's my Todoist setup for kind of early 2026. If you want to learn how my Todoist setup was late 2025, then I would say that this video up here is the one to watch next.